this Monday.
Nice. Enjoyed your weekend? I hope that
Yes,
I hope you were
it was.
treated like a queen.
Oh yes, of course. My daughter would do that. I forgot. So many things have happened since yesterday that I lose track of that. But yes, I had a great weekend, and an even greater week before that because was out of the country for a
Oh,
wedding and family reunion. So
nice, nice, nice.
mm,
What's on our menu today?
but you tell me because I had other areas that I thought would be of interest, but I don't know. You can inform me. I was thinking,
No, I will go
um,
with your flow.
you would what?
I will go with your flow.
Well, I want to go with your flow too because my flow and your flow might be the same one. So, I mean, of course, one of the things that I think is that is fair to easy to or that we can discuss is the question of whether the prime minister should give a response to the Foster Cummings issue
Hmm.
and whether he should make a statement. I think that's one of the things that has been put us up with possible talking point. And yes, I think it does. I mean, I don't think you want a repeat of the Marley McDonald, where those kinds of situations do cause a loss of confidence, a loss of trust,
Hmm.
and whether you should have lost that trust or not, that's not the issue. It does do that. And having gone through the Marlene McDonald 3 times, I think we don't want a repeat of that. And I think he needs to say something because we really don't know what happened. I mean, he got the report. I believe he did get the report. I think it's reasonable to say he did get the report in 2019, but we don't know whether he dealt with it and made his own investigations, called in Mr. Cummings and was satisfied with his responses because he has given responses. I read in the papers where he's saying a lot of the information contained in the report in terms of ownership of property, it is not accurate.
Hmm.
And, you know, so I think that we really don't know what the position really is. And it may very well be that the prime minister may have called him in, may have spoken to him, and may have been satisfied with his responses and decided that it need not go any further, as well as it may be that he didn't do anything about it. But in either case, I do think he's a minister of cabinet. He's serving the country, and um, there are issues that are raised. No one can say that it's nobody has said it's not authentic. They said it's authentic. And no one has said that the investigation was not made. And so trying to sidetrack by talking about how it got in, I mean, nobody's going with that, that is just such an uh, silly obfuscation. It doesn't work. It doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work. So he needs to give an explanation, I think. He owes the country that. And it will also be fair to his minister.
Hmm. Hmm. I quite agree. Richard has just joined us. Good
As
afternoon,
I'm
Mr.
seeing you.
Noray.
I'm seeing you.
Yeah.
Hi. In your usual spot, those paintings behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
that's
one. Unmute your mic, Richard.
I
Okay.
talking all that time and you weren't hearing me.
No, you weren't
no,
hearing you.
no, no, no. We just seen you. I thought you
You
said, well,
see,
why
this
you not saying
technology thing,
anything?
this technology thing, it tends to apply the strategy to me the wrong way, I have to look
Oh,
at
don't take it personally.
I won't. But I'm talking for almost a minute and a half. I mean, come on, it should have, unmute itself. Anyhow, yeah. So, Karen, I've been given the permission, so I wouldn't bother to say I could call it Karen. It's Karen Richard.
Yes,
Karen,
of
how
course.
are you today?
I am good. I had a few challenges which has nothing to do with the show. And matter of fact, the show might be a little relief from the little challenges, but more of just the little issues that come up. So, nothing more than what I'm used to. But Mother's Day was very pleasant. So that's good. And as I had said to
Happy Mother's Day, Karen. All day belated.
belatedly,
Yes, yes, yes.
yes. And I was out the country for a lovely family reunion. I come from a family of 11, and all of us are still alive and kicking.
Oh.
But my father used to say we're being kicked. But so I was out the St. Vincent and family reunion and
Mhm.
wedding. So it was a
Oh.
good relief.
Mhm.
That is nice to hear. That is nice to hear.
Yes.
And when you were away, Karen, I was here fighting for you. People, you were starring, your name was all over this country. Everywhere I turn is Karen, 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 Karen. I said, oh my dear me, Karen is in trouble.
From what
But
point
when
of view, though? From what point
but
of view am I in
yes,
trouble as
this
my
thing
co-host?
about this thing, let me just get here for you, 'cause I
No,
don't
but I
want to
want you to say
disrupt you.
what am I in trouble with? I mean,
No, I
because you give
didn't
me the
say. I
impression
was
that you
just saying
are
it looked that
defending.
way. No, no, yeah, say, well, no, when they have you as starring headline,
Yeah,
and Karen
yeah,
said this, Karen said this about the former
yeah,
prime minister and drug, pay no drug lord, and you remember that?
right.
So, I mean, some people want to stick Karen in another party, so I had to come and say, Karen, I said, no, that,
Not at all.
well, I don't want to carry this thing so far for. The lady has made comments and tried
Yeah.
to discuss the comments if you want now, but she hasn't
But you know
said
what I would
something.
say to that? You know what I
Yeah.
say to that, just the thing, I understand that kind of loyalty to a party because that is, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but perhaps I was like that too. And a lot of people sometimes who are the followers of the party, have that sense of loyalty to the party, and so they will take a position regardless. So I was, that's how it is. But I can assure you that I do belong to another party. I will not join another party, and I know that within the PNM, which is a good thing, which is why we have our constitution. And one of the things that we have, which most constitutions do not have, is freedom of political expression. Beyond
Yeah.
freedom of expression, we also have freedom of political. That is how much we guard jealously the right to do that. And within the party, there have been many, many persons who have expressed very strong views when they do not support the particular leadership at some point in time. That does not mean they don't support what the party stands for. So we must be able to take criticism, and we must be also able to think that perhaps what is being said is not done for any nefarious purpose, but maybe it may be that one is saying, well, you should give back, and this is what I saw, and make a contribution, and then you do what you think you should do with that information. But I
You're
had
so
good
right. Eh?
intentions.
You're so
Hmm?
right about guarding, our constitution permits us,
Yeah,
the freedom of expression. And you have heard other politicians within our party have taken serious hardline positions against the party and when the party was in government.
exactly.
Dr. Rowley,
Very much
for
so.
example, Dr. Rowley, I'm his friend, but I'm also a person who like to express things truthfully. Dr.
Right.
Rowley uh, had said that, he had a problem with the quality of the governance the country was facing. Remember that? Under the great late Patrick Manning, his boss at the time. You know, he said the government was good, the party is good. He had no problem with that, but the governance was terrible. You
So
remember
then
that?
he should, well, he said a lot of things that he's entitled to that, because it's not just like freedom of expression, but the freedom of political expression.
Yes,
So it
yes.
does not mean you're disloyal if you speak out. As a matter of fact, you do it because you have a sense of obligation, whether people feel that you should or not. But that is what goes with a democracy. And I think the most important consideration with speaking out for me is the motive. Now, if you're doing them, if it is based on malice, or based on negative intention to mash up, to be destructive, I think people, you take that into account. But if it is done with good intention, as others have, there have been many defectors from the PNM over the years. I'm not one of them, and I certainly do not belong to another party. I do not intend to belong to another party. But as the Prime Minister himself acknowledges, the leadership is important. And if you feel a particular way, I think, well, that's part of our constitution.
Nothing wrong. Once you are not being intentionally disruptive, or you,
Exactly.
yeah, but you
That's
are
correct.
speaking out on the basis of against whatever policy that you don't like, that you believe would not govern the people or contribute towards governing the people well, you can speak out
Right.
against that. That the PNM has always encouraged that. And I don't know why
Yes.
people want to raise those things. So I would want to urge you to continue to express yourself as I do from here and everywhere else I go. People ask me what I think about the governance. And if I don't find it good as I do right now, I don't find it to be good, I say so. I say so. I have not, because the people are not benefiting. And this government, Karen, you know, from 2015 to now, most of the ministers are the same, you know that. Um, you know, this government has spent almost the most money in the history of this country, right? When you tally all the budgets going up the road and the amount, for how long consecutively?
Okay, but not that I
Could
will
have
defend the government.
from
I
what I
probably
think is $1 trillion, Karen.
Yeah, but with regard to that, I would say the criticism is justified for 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019. Maybe not 2016, because definitely the government, when they came in, found a situation where they had the public servants agreement, which had been settled by the prior administration, and they needed to deal with that. It was a big thing. They had big expenditure they took on. But I think that one has to um, really criticize the government going forward. When in 2018, 2019, 2017, I can't remember what the price of oil and gas was, but the very
I
fact
can
that
tell
we
you
have to,
it was about, I'll tell you, it was about $78. I was following it. It was about
right.
$78. Yeah.
Okay, so what I will say is that where I will give them what the young people say, give them a black or give them some, you know, room is when it played with the COVID-19, because every country was
Country.
impacted by that. I
Yeah.
don't think there was a country that was not in, except perhaps Guyana, no, which is in a room by itself, all in a universe by itself now in terms of GDP and growth and so on. So, you know, I think we can criticize them in terms of taking on so much debt and not, the prime minister doesn't like you to say diversify, but Sri Lanka is in the mess it is, Lebanon is in the mess it is, so many countries are in the mess they are because they don't have foreign exchange. And they don't have foreign exchange because their debt is more than their ability to pay their for their imports. And I think the government was implementation is very weak. Implementation is extremely weak. And that is what they've been criticized for. And I would criticize them for that, because we are in a state now that we still on oil and gas. When will we learn that we cannot be relying on oil and gas? You know, and if you look at the Minister of Finance's, I assume it's a boost, it's certainly meant to be something positive, that we have increased our GDP by 5 billion. But it's, as we said already, that is just the value based on the prices of oil and gas, which now are over $100 for oil, and in the range of $7 and over for natural gas. So it's not because we have increased production,
It was
it's
$8
because we
the other
increased
day.
the value. Huh?
It
We
was
have
$8
increased,
last week. Yeah.
right, there you go. So, and the budget was at 365 for
Yeah.
natural gas and 65 for oil.
Yeah.
So it is not that we have increased production. What we have done, what has happened is the value of what we are exporting has increased. And what is the things that we export? Oil and gas. So it is only reinforcing the problem that Trinidad has, that its fortunes fall and rise on the back of oil and gas prices. So what the government failed to do, in my respectful opinion, is to implement a lot of other export strategies so that we do not have to be continuously dependent on oil and gas. And this is something that promised to do, and we're still looking at tourism development plans and what plan and this plan and that plan. So,
And it's not fair to say some governments have not done it. Mr. Manning had diversified the economy, albeit within the same hydrocarbon
yes,
sector. But
that
he
is he
did
did.
do that. He did do
Yes.
it. And I will think other governments from 2010 to now could have at least done one more thing. Between
Yes, they could have.
2010 and 2012 years, you couldn't come up with a new industry or inject funds and other technologies and creativity into that industry to help it to become a booming industry so that we could use it as one of the avenues of revenue generation for the country by
Well,
now.
one of the things that I see that may be a positive indicator is that I don't know if he has gone already, but I know the Prime Minister said that he was going to Guyana to discuss the agro industry. And to me, that's a very positive step, because there's no question that the Ghana, with a population of about 800,000 and their land space, that if we got
Biggest
it
in
as a
the Caribbean.
CARICOM, huh?
Yeah.
as a
Yes, so
CARICOM
much. Yeah.
country, as a CARICOM country with our land space and our technological ability and our own capacity to create agro industries, chocolates, all the value added products that I think that Trinidad is more than capable, because we have the level of sophistication. And to do that, I think the Prime Minister, if he's intending, as I understood it, but I don't know, to get into some MOU with Guyana so that they will provide us with the raw product of agro, and that we would then go up the value chain, just as how we did with natural gas and Point Lisas, and develop an export market, which is a niche market, and at the same time, reduce our food import bill, which is about 86% of our food is imported. So if we can get into a region where part of that import is from the agro industry, so we use it for food security and a food export, that is a positive development.
But that
Because
could be
we are,
used. That could be used as a booming sector in a different way. It wouldn't be booming in terms of exports and generating forex, but it will cut significantly
import.
the import bill. Yeah, so we'd be saving forex there, and then we would still be able to boost the export side of things, which could also generate
But
additional
Richard,
forex. Yeah.
Richard, I don't agree with that. It wouldn't make a difference. But
I'm
on
saying it would.
a major difference, I
Different.
think it has the
Yeah.
ability to make a major
Yeah.
difference. And I say
Yeah.
that partly because when I had done a thing looking at Trinidad from 1962 till present, our economy, I went back a little bit, and I went back a good bit actually, when the Americans were here and got the Lisa Shagaramas, and they were employing a lot of the local people. The population was 600 and something thousand. And at that time, because of restrictions of food imports and other, the percentage of agriculture contribution to the GDP was 17%. And there were many people involved in the agro industry. I am not talking about the raw product. When we sent our cocoa to England, Cadbury made chocolate. You don't think our chocolate was worth a lot of money? When we sent our coffee to abroad, didn't they make Nescafe with it? Don't they make Belgian chocolate? You buy the niche upmarket products. By the time they put on the value added, it is going to considerably increase the value of the product. So I do not necessarily agree that you cannot build a large export industry from a upmarket, niche market in cocoa, which is highly recognized all over the world, our quality of our cocoa, in the coffee industry, in the pepper, and all those, look at Jamaica with their patties. I remember I used to go there, I said, and they started importing it. Why can't we find a way with our technology to do that same thing with our doubles? So I don't agree that it can't be done. And on that point, let me just say, on that point, they say, when they talk about agriculture, they usually say size is important. But I have written some a paper article, and in doing the research, I found out that the second largest exporter of food in the world is Holland. Holland is 252 times smaller than the United States, which is the first largest exporter of food. So if a small little country like Holland can be the second largest exporter of food, and a large part of their GDP comes from that, I don't see why we can't get into niche upmarket Belgian chocolate, the Cadbury chocolates, the whatever, and create a niche market for ourselves.
No, I'm in agreement with that. What I was really saying, my point was, it will take a little longer for such a sector to generate the type of forex we would need and the relief. Surely between 2010 and now, we'll start seeing the growth phase of it. And as the oil prices fluctuate, and we have these up and down hills and valley arrangement with the pricing and therefore the revenue, this other sector that you are talking about with chocolate and cocoa and so on could have been growing, to offset that. So like around now, we could have been close to the growth phase, or that phase where you talk about, in the, how to say, the product life cycle. You could have been in that place where you really, what you're going to be talking like a cash cow from this sector, where we could have been really have this industry. And refining it more and more, and get better at it, and start looking for new markets for it. And it will take a while, whereas with the hydrocarbon sector, people will come in, they do, you get your percentage off of it when these other companies come and take, and you know what I mean? It's faster that way. But this one might have been more, how should I say, sustainable
Yes,
as you allow it to grow, and therefore it would present more certainty to the people of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to their future outlook.
exactly. And then, and as you rightly said, I think we import 86% of our food. So as you have rightly made the point, it will also impact on our import of food and therefore our use of foreign exchange to buy food. So that on all counts, I think what we're really speaking about is that no government really within recent times has really made a real effort to implement strategies rather than plans, talking about the plans, nice plans, but implement it so that we really do see that we have other avenues for generating foreign exchange, because we don't have a fiat or whatever. We can't make money, we can't supply money. We are dependent on the US currency, and we're seeing what's happening in Sri Lanka. The economy is completely collapsed because their debt is much higher than their foreign exchange reserves. And that's when they start in default. And of course, Iran is not reached in anything like that. But what it does tell you is that if every time our revenue stream and therefore the fiscal deficit is dependent on what oil and gas gets on the international market or whatever contracts you enter into, then it tells you that you need to diversify. And what is from the reports you have gotten, certainly with natural gas, it seems that the production is nowhere near what was anticipated. You get varying reports, but it seems that we are not going to get the level of production that was anticipated. So even though the prices are good, there's a negative too, because we are importing refined fuels. So when we import in refined fuels, we are also paying the higher prices for those same products in US dollars. So, you know, it just speaks to the fact that we need to diversify. That awful word that we've been using, maybe we should find another word to describe it. A foreign
I think,
exchange kuna. I think we have to find another way to say it.
yeah, I think so. I think when people hear the diversification,
Yeah,
they
they get
feel
annoyed.
the word has been around for so long and nothing has happened, that just
Yes,
the mere mentioning of the word is a turn off for them. In
it's
turn,
true.
sometimes they themselves probably don't even come
So,
to terms with the fact that it turns them off. But probably
true.
that's what happened. It's a switching off word. It turns off their system.
But it turned off. I think the prime minister turned him off. He said
And they hear
diversify every.
diversification and they say, I want to hear that. If it not
Yeah, I
mean,
heard
and
so.
more energies applied to really trying to answer it, respond to it, instead evade it. And therefore nothing has
Yes,
happened. Nothing has happened. And I think if they had
yeah,
tried, something would have been happening by today. Look at that you came up with. What you said here today is one of the most profound things that could have been considered. I never liked the agri sector for being
yeah.
considered one of those sectors that we should turn our attention to. Remember, Mr. Manning had come up with 8 other industries where he had called picking winners. He came up with the cinema. He came up
Yachting.
with yachting. Which was the other ones he came up with? You can recall?
I don't know. Some of them I don't know.
But
But
there were
what we were
8.
doing was the International Financial Center too, and that was
Yeah.
that had gotten far, you know, because in fact Lehman Brothers had signed an MOU with us to
Mhm.
start an office here, because we didn't just want the backroom work, which is a low paying, you know, the call center work and the debt collection, what the backroom work that is not really generating in real sustainable income. What you want is the big boys to come here and open up, you know, headquarters possibly, or a branch in financial or in accounting or legal. And Lehman Brothers had signed an MOU with us. And so we were looking to use them as using the Dubai model somewhat. We'd even brought in a consultant who had worked on the IFC with PwC, but he was on his own for Ireland when they went with the IFC. And he had actually drafted their legislation. So he was in Trinidad working on the draft legislation for the IFC. I had gone to Dubai twice, met with the top people there, and saw their model. So it wasn't a question. Those 2 buildings by Hyatt were going to be used initially for the IFC, And the old airport that we had, when we used it for the, when we had that big celebration of the Commonwealth, and we used that as a special airport for them, for the delegates to come in and those people to come in, we were intending to convert that for use just for the IFC as a specialist airport with helicopter, take them into Port of Spain and create this IFC. But what happened was 2008, the collapse, global financial crisis, and Lehman Brothers and all the big boys, some of them went out of business. Bear Stearns, overnight, from a Friday to a Monday, they went out of business. Because that's, I mean, that's just so amazing. But it was definitely something that we could revisit. And all those negative naysayers and Debbie Downers who say all the reasons why we can't, there were lots of good reasons why we could. One, commerce is in the language of commerce is English. Our positioning, geopolitical position between North America and South America. We have a stability of our government. We also have an educated population. There were so many positives. And in fact, in Ireland, when all the persons who saying Ireland couldn't do it, there was one man who ended up to be a little bit of a crook, Richard. Richard, what are you doing? You're looking like I'm putting you to sleep.
No, no, of course not. No, no, no.
Well,
no.
yeah, but you look like you're drifting there.
No,
so
no.
All right, okay. But anyway,
No.
so
No,
he
and
had
one of the offices, if you want me to add, just a reminder in case
I
you
want
needed
you
to
to
make a
add.
point. Yeah, one of the offices that when Mr. Manning was doing the waterfront project and all that, wasn't the secretariat to the free trade of the area of the Americas or something was to come there as well?
I don't know
I
about
think
the
they call it
secretariat.
FPAA.
I don't
Mr.
know if
Valley
that
was
was his
pushing
plan.
that.
Okay, well, that might have been foreign affairs
And
or something.
they started changing. He did a whole seminar on it. I went to Miami when he was talking about it too. And I heard it, and he said they were going to change all the signage in Trinidad. We're going to, the top would be in
that,
English.
yeah. I remember that. But I think that was
Right.
before me, I wasn't in office with Bali's time. But the IFC is a Dubai, look how it has grown in Dubai, and it grew in Ireland. And all I was trying to say there is, you just have to have one person who has the vision and the leadership and the belief to push something like that, and it can happen. And we have a lot of positives that we can make an IFC a real opportunity for foreign exchange earning, for creating our own center for servicing, because we also have a very strong financial sector. We have a very strong insurance sector, and we have all the many positives to make it a reality. So that's what I'm saying is that there are options. There's tourism, which I have always encouraged, cultural tourism for Trinidad, and Sand, Sea, and ecotourism for Tobago, best of both worlds. So it's not any new ideas, it's implementation is missing.
I agree. And that has always been a big part of our problem for the longest while. A lot of ideas on the table. Some of them, what they do is that they reprocess out ideas and refine them on the table. They go not much further than being on the table. And that is a sad thing. And year on year, they keep on finding their way back into budgets after budgets and hearing about them. And then at the end of the budget, everyone will say, well, we heard that last year, the year before, but nothing happened. So we really have an implementation problem in the country. And that is a big part that we need to correct in order to move this country forward. It's just sad. But one of the things I want to bring it back to, Karen, is, we can't get away from it. We could, but it would be better if we try to set one path. You could set the record straight, because I think people were misinterpreting it when they said you spoke about the response to your recent revelations, drug kingpins or something like that. What do you meant by that? Because people try to interpret.
I don't think I use the word drug kingpins. I don't.
Well,
that's not my language. I don't think I would use that language.
Say to us what you meant.
But I think you know, Richard. Richard. That is a subject that one should be very careful on treading on. I think I said a lot.
I agree. Don't
right. And I think I said more. And I think I said more than I probably.
You wanted to.
Not wanted to, because nobody's holding a gun to my head. But I would just say that I think I've said enough on the topic. And those who want to say they don't agree, but they're free to, and those who want to agree are free to agree with me. Those who are in between, they're free to do that. I mean, I have no, what is it called? No horse in any race, and people are free to accept what I said or free not to accept it. It was a point of view which I expressed, and I don't think it will help me. As you know, Richard, it would not be helpful to me if I were to continue to pursue that line. Let someone else take up the if they think there's value in it,
I
let them
agree.
take it
I
up.
agree. I agree. I agree. It's just one part I heard. You want to discuss one part I heard that, I don't know if you could
What
touch
is the
on it.
part?
One part. Because it
Uh-huh.
concerned me, because Mr. Manning
Uh-huh.
spoke about those things before. When he
Yeah.
spoke about Mr. Big, right? He spoke about Mr.
I
Big.
don't know who Mr. Big is. I don't know who
No,
Mr. Big is.
neither
Never
do I,
shared
and I
with
know
me.
you don't know who's Mr. Big either. None
I
of
don't know,
us.
and I don't want. And
Yeah.
guess what? I do not want to know. There is a good value in ignorance, right? There's a good
Plausible
value in ignorance.
deniability, and you are right. I do not know. I do not know who's
I
Mr.
do not know, and I do not want to know.
Yeah,
Whoever
yeah.
know, I do not want to know. What I
But,
would have said is
but
that
I am not
rather
asking
than
you, yeah, to say who is. I'm
I
not
don't
saying that
because I don't know.
because you
I,
don't know, right? And I
I do
agree
not know
with you.
because they may have
Listen,
many big fishes. But is that a correct
plenty,
English? Because
Karen, come on,
plural
all
is
over
fish.
this country, you would have those fishes. They're so big, they're like whales all over the country.
I don't know
Uh,
what. Sometimes you have to use fish or fishes. I don't know which one is grammatically correct. But anyhow, we know it's more than one.
Yeah,
That's what
use
we say.
fishes when it's for plural, when it's more than one of different types. But you use
Okay.
fish when it's plenty of the same.
Okay, so we say we're talking about this plenty fish
Plenty fish.
and not plenty fishes. I
No,
learned
no,
the
no,
difference
no, no.
today.
You have it there. You have it there. But just a second part that
What's that?
concerned me. One part that concerned me.
You're not going
I
to get
know
me
you
to
don't
speak
know
on
who
this
they are,
thing.
so you can't
I
say it.
don't know. And I
Right?
don't
It's the
want to know.
jobs you want, the jobs. You says people wanted certain jobs. I don't know. But
I'm
what
not
were the
going to.
jobs?
I'm not going to elucidate that. Yeah, I'm not going to
Okay.
elucidate on that. But you're trying your best. But I'm not going to elucidate on that. Right?
No, no,
You
no.
know, let
No,
everybody
you
try to
know
figure out, read between the
what jobs
lines.
they are, what jobs they
Well,
want, and yeah.
exactly.
Okay, all right, all right. We're
There
gonna have to
we go.
continue. We're gonna have to continue to process out that, Karen. Someday we must take a cup of coffee and we'll chat. But in relation to our country, in relation to our country, it
Yes.
would be good to know, have some idea, because it was nice that I think some information could have been shared with the cabinet then, not just with you alone, so that it would have been a number you all who might have heard some of that. And I always back Mr. Manning, because when I heard the speech and about the OPVs and the role they should have played, and they all should have worked in tandem to fight and push back the type of criminal behavior, criminality we've been witnessing. And it worked to some extent. It got rid of the kidnapping and all these other types of things. So the
Oh yeah,
administration
that's
to
true.
which you were a part, it helped a lot. People criticized the blimp, but we were told the blimp played such a huge role. Where you seeing the blimp, I was told, is not where the blimp was looking. When you see the blimp, you are safe to know the blimp not looking at you. It's when you're not seeing the blimp, that's when it should be. So I wouldn't
We
push
have to
that
laugh,
any.
you know.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
because I really don't want to do that, and I think it's not helpful to me or to
Mhm.
the country. And I think I've said enough that people can either discredit what I've said, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. You know, I'm not fighting anybody about anything. So I have no problem with how people have not received or received what I've said. Not a
What
problem.
is fueling, in your opinion, the crime wave in TNT today?
We are coming back to
No, no, this is
the
different. The current
that is
situation.
different.
Yeah, this is
Well,
different. It may be related,
what's the
but
difference? No, it's not
well,
different in
today
my
it
mind. Okay,
appears
you
to
say
be
why. You say why it's different. Let me ask the
right,
co-host.
because before I will try to distinguish the two. Now,
Mm-hmm.
the general commonality between what happening now and what you spoke of is that they are both crimes, crimes and crimes, all crime. But then you have different category of crimes. What you see now, murder is murder, yes, but now you find more of a domestic nature. People falling out over land, property, matrimonial misconduct, or extramarital affair, and people. All these sorts of things seem to be on the table when you hear something now, or murder, suicide, and but it's just ramping up. But apart from that, you have a lot of killing now in open daylight. You know, the bandits, the murderers, they seem to be becoming more emboldened. Like they feel, the judicial system is not working. We could do what we want now. It appears as though bail, some of them will be able to get bail so that they feel even, I could do this and there's still a chance that even if I'm caught, I will be back outside. I don't know. That is the angle I'm talking about. Whereas
Okay,
before,
so
you would have heard more about drugs and drug-related matters and so on. This could be a lower level, how I should say, remnants of the same drug problem that the country faces. I get
yeah,
that.
but
But
Joe, where you got your statistics on that? This that you
no,
could
no, I say
determine
nay. I'm
that.
saying nay. But when you listen
Huh?
to
You have
different
be,
programs, when you listen to
but
different
no,
programs
you must be
and
driven by
different
data
institutions,
though. You
no,
must
of
be
course it
driven
should. But
by data.
when you listen, I am, and I tend to triangulate my information, but I'm not one who is heavily into the crime statistic. So you won't find me going into that numerical data too much. But what I would do is listen to other professionals who would speak on it, and I would listen to one view as opposed to the other, and then I'll try to extrapolate what I think, that I'm picking up from what I'm hearing. And just as I've said that I'm putting it to you now, as such a professional, to see if what I've begun to conclude, if it really has much merit or not. That is why I'm asking you. What it you think
Right.
is happening? What is
So I
driving it?
would say, okay, what's that? 5 minutes?
No, no, no. No, no, no. You have all the
No, no,
time,
no, no,
Karen.
no. Okay. No, what I would say to that is that first I would like to see the data to support anecdotal incidents because they've said how many people have been killed. So I would like to be able to separate what seems to be domestic violence related as opposed to murders committed with unlicensed guns. Because once a gun is involved and it's unlicensed, it is tied to an exchange of drugs and guns. I mean, Martin Joseph was the minister during my time, and he certainly explained it for the national community. It's in the Hansard, how it operated. So if a lot of the murders that are being committed with unlicensed guns, that in itself tells you or it is part of the underground activity. Another thing is, and I would like to separate that from what you're calling the murder suicide, where it is could be family related. And oftentimes you find that those which are domestic cases, oftentimes you find out that one of the parties is on cocaine, on some heavy drugs. And so it is not a delinked from that activity. And thirdly, more importantly, what I see is you're seeing the symptoms of a thing. It's like if you go to the doctor with a fever, you don't know what is the cause of the fever. And if the doctor decides that he's not going to investigate further and give you 2 Panadol and tell you to go home, you might find that the fever will come back worse. But if he really investigates the root cause of the fever and he decides that this is the root cause, you might find there are contributing factors that got you sicker than before, made you more vulnerable to the illness, but you can't treat the illness until you deal with the main cause. So I would say that your explanation, unless you can provide me with data, because that's why the IMF and the World Bank, especially IMF, have been insisting on Trinidad setting up a national statistical institute, because you cannot manage what you don't measure. And how do you know what is going on or how to plan for your national security and all those sorts of things if you have not gotten a good understanding of what is driving the crime? So I would want to say that what you are speaking about, every country is going to have their measure of domestic violence. And most times you find that the person is on drugs anyhow. I mean, so many of those people. I remember this man killed his wife. He was living in the back. But I don't, they've come out and when you hear the story eventually. So somehow it gets in robberies because you have to feed a habit, because that is your way that is how you make a living. Sometimes people who want CPEP and URP, they're working, but it's not giving them enough income. And so I will not detach or delink and most of the crime, whether it is robbery, whether it's the worst kind, which is murder, from the underlying cause of the problem. I have a feeling if we were to deal with that, it wouldn't, just as how we talk, say it might take 10 years for us to see the agro industry really take off. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be hard because you have a whole generation of young men who have grown up in a particularly violent sort of situation who have grown up in that. So you have to say to yourself, what is it that changed in these communities that have made this violence and these drugs and these gangs? What is it that's fueling it? There's something fueling it. And once you deal with what's fueling it, then you will be able to slowly and surely, because it's become almost endemic in the society. But what I will say in response to what I'm saying generally, you will find, for example, as I've said, Tobago, when people bring things down to using code and using a code for who is responsible for the crime, I say, well, why isn't Tobago overrun with criminals? Because there's a difference between urban poverty and rural poverty. And I also say, I'm not a scientist, but I know when you want to prove or disprove a theory, you keep everything the same, and then you have the variable. So everything is constant, you have a variable. And I think if I were to look at places like the usual suspects, Daventale, Mova, going down East-West Corridor, if I were to use a variable, I know about 20, 25 years ago, you would have crime in those communities, but it would not be anything like what you see. And it still had dude or whatever, the URP version. They still had single parents. They still had mothers bringing up big children by themselves. They still had poverty. Poverty was much higher back in the day. You certainly did not have the level of transfers and subsidies that a lot of people have enjoyed since the PNM government. They have got much more support, whether it's the food feeding program, whether it is free, but all kinds of things to soften the impact of low incomes. And you did not have it then, yet you did not. So what is the variable? What is the variable that has changed the dynamics in these communities? So let us not blind ourselves to the truth and pretend that we don't understand what's the problem. It's not the problem, but it's the main problem. And if you have a child that is already troubled, if you have a child who does not have his father around, if you have a child who is left to his own devices, if you have a child who looks to the neighbors to give him the love and attention he doesn't get from the home, he's very, very vulnerable. And that's where I would go. That's where you would go, right? So let us not pretend that what is the driving force is the root cause. And that's what I have said. And people don't have to accept it. I will look at data and I would see where the crimes are being committed. I would look at the nature of the crimes. I would look at whether guns and unlicensed guns are used. And I would then be able to create a hypothesis which is data driven and not my anecdotal stories that are only done to obfuscate the real truth and to get people sidelined on all kinds of nonsense and red herrings and not deal with the real truth, like talking about they wearing their pants low. Yes, when they wear, those are all factors of vulnerability. If you want an alcoholic to drink plenty rum, you know what you'll take him? You take him to jail and put him in a rum shop. And you stay there for 2 days, he will drink the rum. So let's not pretend. I'm saying, let's not pretend. Don't use those arguments with me because they do not have any value. And that the murder story might have cultural origins in it, but when you look at the thing, unless you can give me data to support what you just said, I think the data that I have seen goes the opposite way.
Right. So you are seeing an attachment to most of these crimes, to drugs and so on.
Well, I would say they are gang related. And it's not Trinidad alone. Anytime you talk about gangs, so it's unless I want to say we are an outlier and we're different from other countries, I don't have the data. I don't work in the Ministry of National Security. I'm not in the police service, but I don't have to be working there. You just have to have I don't know anywhere, whether it is Los Angeles in the United States, whether it is in the Chinese mafia, in America, which they say they have the Russian mafia, which is in New York, or the Italian mafia, right? Well, I don't know any gang or group that are involved in illegal activity that you will not find that drugs play a part. and with the drugs come the guns. I don't know, and if you know
And
differently, but then
all those people
differently.
who are attached to the gangs and the families and so on, technically, by extension, they are all linked to it in some way.
Well, I am not saying they are. I am saying that unless you can give me that Trinidad is different from other countries in the world, unless you have something that says that they have gangs in other countries that have kumbaya and they sit down around a fireside and they hold hands and they have a prayer meeting and they all say kumbaya, kumbaya. Unless you can show, unless you can point me to those types of gangs that are involved in that, which also have unlicensed guns in their possession, unless you can point me to those types of gangs, I have to follow what is the norm everywhere in the world. So if you tell me that they have gangs in Los Angeles, as I said, or you tell me there's a gang X, Y, and Z part of the world, it is reasonable to conclude that what is bringing the gangs together is illegal activity. And it's also reasonable to conclude that it's feeling that illegal activity is related to what has been said by Martin Joseph many years ago, the correlation between the two. So I don't know that we are an exception to the rule. I think we are part of the rule. So I don't have any evidence of that, but I'm sure if I look up at that information, that's the answer I will get. So it's not unreasonable for me to conclude without any, I don't have any data to support because I'm not a member of a gang, but I'm sure they don't have kumbaya. And I'm sure they don't sit around a fireside singing hymns.
I agree with you, Karen. I agree with you.
Oh my God, you gave in. I find you.
No, I think no, you were misreading what I was saying. I was
misreading.
What you were saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was supporting what you were saying. I picked up as you were going along that you thought we were at odds. So I said, no, I'll wait till you finish to let you know we are almost virtually on the same page. I
love
do
the use
believe
of the word almost. Almost virtually.
Yes, to accentuate how close we were.
Oh, that's what, I see.
Yes,
it's
yes,
not to
yes.
show where we are apart, but where we are close. But you see,
How
what
where we
I
are
thought
close.
you said, I thought
Yeah,
what you were
yeah.
saying is that I thought I heard you say that one has to be careful to determine what is the cause of the crime and robbery. And I thought I heard you say that many times it may be domestically related, it may be murder, suicide, so it may have nothing to do with crime in the country. And I said back to you that if you are going to say that and not rely on, you heard a story and anecdotes, which the newspaper will blow up because the gang-related crimes are so commonplace now that they don't even make headlines anymore. But if you're going to tell me you went to Ministry of National Security and you got the data breakdown, and then you said that to me, I'd say, okay. But if you don't have that, then you just, that's just a red herring.
And that is where I think you thought that we were on a different side.
Oh gosh, now we come to I thought.
Yeah. So I am saying
yes,
that yes, I am saying that those other types linked to economic challenges, you have those other, all will not be, nothing is absolute. So it wouldn't be 100% to say
no,
every
I would
murder,
never say that.
right. So, but the others in terms of domestic violence or suicide, and the point I was making there is that those types may be of a smaller percentage of the whole pie in relation to what is really driving the criminal activity in the country. And I am saying the substantial factor would be the drug link.
And I will say too that whilst these other crimes, I know they would not, there's some that are absolutely not related. They have family problems, they inherit all kinds of issues with the family.
Course, yeah.
They have some family, there's some issues there that have nothing to do with nothing.
Yeah.
Right. But even so, for example, I remember my who used my hair stylist, so I don't want to say hairdresser because I think they probably don't like to be called hairdresser anymore. So, but that was many years ago. Her mother had a bira, the bracelets, Indian a bracelet. I don't know what you bira, I think it is. Anyway, excuse me if I got it wrong. No disrespect.
Daddy Mac?
Huh?
Nas calling the producer. I thought he might know.
I think it's a bira. Yeah.
Bira, I got it right. Okay. Bira. Yeah. So I had it right. Okay.
I tend to
So
do like doctors. When you're in trouble, you call for help.
yes, but you notice I thought it was right, but I didn't want to swear on a Quran, Bible, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the point I am making is that the mother was in East. I used to live in East Trinidad, and she was held up in the middle of the day by this guy. But guess what he took it for? To go and buy drugs.
Yeah.
So sometimes, when they get hooked, they will go in. The own parents have to get restraining. You know how many parents have had to get restraining orders again because anything they could move, it's moving out. They're selling the
But they
gas
have to feed
stuff.
that addiction, you know.
Huh?
They have to feed that
Right. So
addiction,
what I am,
and it's going to
well,
cost. Yeah.
Richard. So what I am
Yeah.
saying is that even when it is not directly linked, like they're not a member of a gang, but they get
Right.
hooked on the drugs, or they go and borrow from whatever it is. I don't know their world. I'm not part of their world, but whatever goes on in that world, right? Once that happens, and I know people who have been hooked on cocaine, and you see the absolute disregard for even for their own self. You cannot leave anything that could move because it's moving out with them, and they're selling it. They're selling it. The gas tank,
Gas tank,
anything.
everything, stove, anything.
Right. So right. And their own parents, their own mothers, have to go to the court and get restrained. And you know how many times when you hear about a son killing his mother or a son killing his father, you know how many times that child is on drugs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No,
So,
I'm in agreement. Yeah.
so
And
what my point is that there was that are direct, but even among those that we want to call domestic violence, even among that minority group, there is a linkage, and so many families have been destroyed. I'm sure you know families destroyed by that. I am sure we all know exactly, and I'm sure you have seen mothers having to literally take out restraint, and even that does not keep the child out of them because when they're
I
on
have
it,
seen a
it's
young man
nothing.
just for $10 piece, he call it.
Yes.
You know, we call weeding up like landscaping. He alone, a man tell him I get $10 to buy 2 5-piece. We had to clean up that whole mountain for me. I know he went and cut down the whole. If you see work for $10, and then he ran and took this. Yeah, and the fella took a picture and showed us after when he bought it, he put it in this.
But you are very
and
wrong just to give him $10. You are taken. I am very embarrassed by you. You have taken. Oh, not you.
Not me.
By the way,
Karen,
I've never seen any
I
of
don't
that.
have no mountain. I told you what a gentleman
It's
did.
somebody else. Oh, yes,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
somebody. Oh, because I would be so
and
shocked
I'm
at
saying
that.
that to say the effect this thing
Exploiting
has.
people.
Yeah.
But it destroys families. That is the thing. And mothers. You know, it's the mothers that take that shit.
Let me tell you, early in the game, they tend to lose their sense of responsibility, pride, and everything is gone. Gone. They don't see parents as that anymore, you know. They see them as something that they could, as commodities or some sort of thing like that, that they may negotiate.
And the day you tell them you're not giving them the $20, that's where you get the murder that you're talking about, that you call it domestic violence, but it's not really domestic violence. Okay, we did enough on that. So we both agree that the gangs do not meet for kumbaya meetings. Did we agree that they do not meet for kumbaya moments?
Fat Karen. I agree. 100%.
Okay. And by the way, I have never seen the drug. I have never seen cocaine in my life.
No,
just for the record.
I saw it in operation when he took the picture, the video, and he had a fire and something, and it turned into smoke in a glass. The same guy who did the mountain, and he was inhaling this thing, pulling this thing into his system. And I say he did all that work, and there's the reward to pull smoke.
You saw that he did all what you tell me?
I saw from where we live, but the guy's a rich fella. He has plenty trucks and things. So this guy always
too much information, you'll get in trouble with the fella.
No, I don't live there anymore.
My husband is from Nelson Street. My husband came from Nelson Street. So when I met him, I really was very naive, I think. So they lived on the ground floor. When you're going up these steps, you see all what they think that they put it in, pipes or whatever it is. I mean, it was so sad to see so many of these men just destroy their lives, destroy. So we leave it alone. And I steady enough, as I say, and we talking generally. I have
Say
no
no more on
special
that part,
knowledge.
Karen. Here the part I wanted to talk on now, if you could.
What? Yes,
Since
tell me
we
a
know
good
that you
topic.
yeah, no, same thing, but the other
Oh,
side.
shit,
We
but
can't just
now,
leave it.
so we're talking
No, we
about fish
can't
still
leave it
then.
there.
We
That's
still
it.
talk
How
about
do we
fish.
compare it? No, no, I deal with it. How big they are. I'm dealing now with how do we solve a problem like this? Since we know that the main driver of criminal acts or criminality in this country is attached to drugs and the drug trade. How do we fix that today? People from the government, they tend to run out the office to log on or run in the office to log on. They're all hearing us because I get WhatsApp after so on to tell me I should say this and that. So I know. And as I ask them not to listen, I don't talk to them. I'm talking to the all listeners there. But they are hearing what you could say. How could we fix that problem?
But it just has to have, I think it has to start with the government, and the commitment of the government to deal with it. I mean, they have the knowledge. I don't have the knowledge. I don't want to have the knowledge, but I would imagine there are a number of things that can be done, because I'm sure it's a very difficult thing, after how many years, I believe, that to get something so entrenched in our system, in our country, to be dealt with. So I would just say that some of the measures that Mr. Manning was taking, but let me just say that in all fairness, the Revenue Authority, and which I spoke about previously, in all fairness, when we were in government, we had a three-fifths majority, and that's why Mr. Manning was pushing certain legislation, because we had what was necessary to get it passed through the parliament. This government does not have that three-fifths majority. So if they want this legislation to be implemented in some form, they had to remove the parts that would prevent it from being becoming law. So they had to take out certain things that would have made the law more robust. So what do? Half a dozen, six of one? Are you going to settle with no bread, or half a dozen, half of a loaf? So in some ways, there has been a challenge, but the measures that Mr. Manning was putting in place, I think it would have gone a long way. And one of the things I think they definitely need to address is with the DPP. He needs far more staff, and they need to be trained in forensic and white collar crime. There's so many lawyers in Trinidad now that they need more staffing in that thing. He has too many responsibilities, and I think that will help a lot. But there are a number of things I think Mr. Manning had put in place, but it really comes down to you have to want to make it happen. You've got to want, you have, like in anything, anything, Richard, anything that you want to make happen, you've got to have that will and determination. And I'm sure it's a difficult thing for any government to be able to do, but it certainly can't be left to the citizens. Citizens cannot be put at risk of their own lives. They cannot be put at risk. You cannot expect a citizen to put themselves out there. No way. That's why you have the government. That's why you have a Minister of National Security. That's why you have a Prime Minister. That's why you have a police service. And there must be help that they can get, whether it's from the United States or from England. There's so many things. I'm sure the Prime Minister, like many Prime Ministers, has seen a lot of prescriptions for dealing with it. I'm sure it is not an easy thing to deal with. I'm sure it's not an overnight thing to deal with. Quite sure about that. But I think what has happened, that's just my opinion, I think that there's a sense of hopelessness from people, that they don't feel that it will, they don't feel that, it's a tough thing to deal with. I wouldn't want to have to deal with it, but it has to come from the government. They are the ones that provide national security. They're the ones that are responsible for our well-being and our national security. So it has to come from there. So I would start from that. I would say it has to start with the government.
Is it that party officials tend to be so openly dishonest and disrespectful to the citizens of the country that during an election, Karen, that they would say, once we get in, we'd solve the problem. We know how to do it. And when they get inside, there's no difference. Why?
Well, in fairness, I listen to a lot of people who talk and give you the prescriptions of what you should do and do. But it's like being a teacher and a school. When you're a student, or you could say all the things wrong with the teachers and the teaching system, then you become a teacher and you get a different perspective. It is not that easy. Look at I read in the editorial on Mr. Gonzalez, who apparently I taught many years ago, Marvin Gonzalez. And apparently he had said, with all good intentions, I'm sure, that he was going to cut the personnel by 50% in whatever time period. When he goes inside there, it's a different kettle of fish, you know. He has had 3 acting CEOs. He has been faced with so many challenges. So what happens, I think, for many people who haven't gotten experience before, that when they come in there thinking they can achieve certain things, they realize the amount of roadblocks are put in their way. I remembered being given, I won't say who gave it to me, but someone gave me very early on in the game, a PS, gave me CDs with Yes, Mr. Minister. And the whole idea of it is that if you're a permanent secretary and you don't get along, if your permanent secretary supports another party, they will tell you, yes, Mr. Minister, yes, Mr. Minister, and they'll take your thing and put it at the bottom of the drawer. And every time you ask that, and they have the power because they deal with the public servants. So I will say, to answer your question, fairly for a lot of ministers, I do think it's not that they don't have the desire to do good. Maybe some of them come in there with their agenda already, but there are a lot of them who do come in with the intention to do good. But when they get in there, they realize there are so many interlocking relationships that you don't even have any idea that are going on behind, then you realize it's not a walk in the park and it's far more difficult than you anticipated. And when you come up with those roadblocks, left, right, every time you think you're making one step forward, and they always give you an answer, always have an answer for you. So I think that not all, a lot of them come in there with the good intentions, and reality is different from what they actually experience. I really do think so.
We're still spending so much money annually, so much money. We're wasting it then because we are not getting a fair return on what we are spending to fight crime. Or is it that if we are not doing what we are doing, it would have been much worse?
I don't know about it being much worse. I think it's really pretty bad.
It's terrible.
Because when I look at, a few years ago, good many years, not so many, maybe 5-6 years ago, I just did a review. I don't know what it is right now, but I looked at other budgets in other countries and where national security, yes, Barbados was one of them. And Barbados was low down in terms of spend for national security. Always high right up was health and education. And the reason you can spend some money on health and education because you don't have to spend so much money on national security. And so the problem with the national security, it takes so much of our budget. It's usually in the top 3 items. Sometimes it's number 1 item, and yet you still have a very high crime. A very high crime rate, which only came down when we had the state emergency and the public health regulations, which helped to bring down the numbers. But it's not just murders. It's just the fact is that it's a really difficult undertaking to really deal effectively with the problems, and you need good and strong leadership and committed leadership.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you and I may conclude that the leadership we have now, perhaps it's the best that is being done, but perhaps it also isn't adequate.
Not the best.
Yeah. No, it might be the best in terms of what the person and the person's team may be putting out. They're probably doing their best, but it seemed to be
that's not good enough. It's not good enough.
That's it. That's the point.
And by the way, I don't think the other side is any better. As a matter of fact, as and people say I join, no, I'm a citizen of this country and I love my country. I love Trinidad. So, but it's not good enough at all. And we're spending too much money on national security. And if you really want to develop tourism, cultural tourism, or any kind of tourism, I mean, Jamaica is different from us, Jamaica has a much higher crime rate than we have, murder rate much higher, in the thousands, right? Even though the population is about double ours, but still it's really extreme. But they have their whole tourism sector in the North Coast. And most people do not, when they go into Jamaica and go to Negril and all those places, they take a plane sometimes straight to the airport on the North Coast, or sometimes straight from the airport in the Kingston and go straight. They just go straight on to the North Coast. So what Jamaica has, even though they have a very high crime rate, in a way, the tourists are insulated from the crime because of the fact that it's on the North Coast. We don't have that insulation.
This is
So
where
I don't know
Montego
how,
Bay is and that's
right, Negril
yes.
and all of that. So what I'm saying is, if you really want to develop the cultural or any form of tourism, I mean, if I were a person who was traveling and a tourist, I mean, I would look at one of the things they're going to look at is the crime rate, and that will frighten me a good bit about coming here, because tourists
Whenever
tend
I
to
go to
stand out.
Jamaica, people always tell me I try not to end up in 9 Kingston, 11, 12, or 13 Kingston, or worse, 23 or 24 Kingston. They say it'll
All right.
disappear, nobody will know. Because nobody will come looking for you. My daughter studied in Jamaica, and I was to tell her, not 9 Kingston.
Well, I don't know what 9 Kingston is,
No,
but
like these are different parts of the country. I come
I
into
understand.
Lavendale and so on. So they have, my dear me, I tell you. Okay, so we had this thing with this report coming out about all these children being abused.
Yes.
You heard about that. You heard about that. How do you react to that? People calling on the minister to resign. Is that fair?
What I would say is I would give an opportunity, just as I said with the Prime Minister. I think the Prime Minister should speak on the Foster Cummings issue. And in all fairness, his minister, because he has given a different, Foster Cummings has given a different explanation, and you can't discount it. So I think he needs to do that. With regard to the minister, yes, you held it back for 5 months, you had it, and really and truly, we put you there, but we put you there to implement. And if we start going down the line of she should resign, there are many of them that should resign, because many of them have not performed well in their ministries, have not, if you're going to use any metric to determine their performance. So I will want to hear what she has to say to defend her position, that my understanding is that was on her desk for 5 months, and it took this time when some people say, when some issue has come out, to try to obfuscate and take people off what I don't know what the new issue is, and that she'll be given an opportunity to explain herself. But I'm not going to say that she should resign like that. I mean, I know I've been in government, and people think they know. You don't know what barriers she had. You don't know what efforts she made. We don't know. We do not know if she asked for the funding. She's been asking for funding. She has not. And then as a minister, you don't want to go and talk about another minister and say, well, I can't get this because the minister blocking. You have to cabinet responsibility. So you don't know what are the challenges that she may have faced. And I don't want to condemn her out of hand without her giving up. That's even in our system, you're innocent until proven guilty. And I think an opportunity should be given to her to explain it. And then at the end of the day, then we decide whether is that good enough. But it's terrible. I mean, when the Jones report comes and she tells you what is going on in those schools, and they have not built any of these houses, that safe houses, apparently, that the other administration had promised to build, and they never came. What has happened? I don't know what she's dealing with. I don't know what her constraints are. You don't know what her constraints are.
But I think you and I could agree, if you held it for 5 months, yeah?
For 5 months.
5 months. But when the story broke, the reaction of the minister is what concerned me. She was almost moved to tears. Like she was so surprised. Now, you can't tell me you're so surprised now and you had it for 5 months. That reaction should have been 5 months ago. So is it that she had it on her desk for 5 months, but she had not consulted it?
Well, what I will say, definitely, for her to come out and say her heart is breaking and all of that. I mean, who wants to hear you say that?
So you heard
when you sat down.
Yes.
Yeah. So, it doesn't read well. It doesn't inspire confidence in her or anything. It's definitely not a good thing for her to come out. I mean, it makes her look, sorry to say, a bit hypocritical, especially when you've sat down with it. But as I have said, and I will say, is I still want to hear what she has to say that, but it does not, it's not a good look. Huh?
Natural justice.
Right, there you go. And
Yeah.
many cases have been dismissed on a basis of breach of natural justice. You'll be
Yeah.
surprised. So it's a bad look. Her response seems hypocritical, and she needs to give an explanation why she sat with it for 5 months and apparently did nothing. And you're talking about the most vulnerable, two most vulnerable groups in our society are our children and our older people. And when you have children and you hear some of the reports that we were disclosed of what the kind of brutality that some of these children were subjected to, it makes you wonder, what was she doing for those 5 months when that report was? But then give her an opportunity to give an explanation. And then when we hear it, we will still say, as you have said, 5 months and you said nothing, and now you want to say breaking your heart. So it didn't break your heart 5 months ago?
And what is worse, Karen, if one child was abused or molested,
yes,
within that 5 months, it was on her desk before it was made public, then to me, one could argue recklessness. Because if you had acted, you follow what I'm saying? Then you might have been able to prevent another child from going through what the report was saying that was taking place.
Absolutely.
But
it's very hard.
The report informed you what taking place, and then you rest it down there for 5 months. That's almost half a year. How many more children could have been victims of the same thing that you were now claiming that is breaking your heart when you had it just resting there? That to me is a steep hill to climb to come up with an
that's Mount Everest. You have to climb up to Mount. You have to go to Mount Everest. You have a Mount Everest to climb, because the more you say it, is the more it's disgraceful. It's the more because you're dealing with children and they're so vulnerable. And in the law, they say that the judges are the protectors of, or the government eventually, because it was the king who was the protector of lunatics, children, and the old, because they are the vulnerable ones in our society. And as the government, it seemed that she failed those in her charge. And therefore, that hill is so high that I don't think she'll make it halfway up that mountain. And the point is, she opened herself up, yes, and she opened up herself.
Karen, I think for people like you and me, all that may be required is for her to say what she had to say, but it's a formality where we are.
Yeah, it's a formality. It's a formality.
Yeah,
it's a formality.
What you have to say, but
she's not even going up half that mountain. She ain't got enough up the mountain. She the shepherd or the Sherpas, they have Sherpas that take them up the mountain. The Sherpa going to he said, Madam, I have to abandon here. This climb ain't going good. So I must say
I was moved to tears too when I heard it. But what moved me to tears wasn't just the report,
It's what she said.
Fact that she was being moved to tears and he had it there for
did nothing.
Months. That is what
absolutely agree. But you know what?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Remember we said natural justice? So let us give O.J. Simpson his time. Let us give O.J. Simpson his chance to acquit himself. Okay?
Karen, Johnny Cochran said if the glove did not fit, you must acquit.
Listen, Johnny Cochran came to Trinidad, and he came to the law school, and he spoke to the students at the law school. And so they got an opportunity to hear him. And yes, if it don't fit, he must acquit. And that's it. Yeah. He turned the criminal system justice again, and he used the criminal justice system for the first time in favor of a black man who was wealthy, and in white America to date has not got moved. They're carrying on a temper tantrum for the last 20 years, because even if he's guilty, the Emmett Hill, how many black people have been lynched, have been tried by all-white juries, have spent so much time, and they're not too worried about that. But when it's one of their own...
They kill people just like that.
Yeah, but the problem with them is their own system worked for OJ, because because guess what? OJ had money, and he could buy the best. And he didn't have to prove his innocence. You have to prove his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Yeah. And the system worked for him, and they cannot get over the fact that the system worked in
Could
favor
work
of
for a
him.
man like OJ.
Yeah, the
It
black
was not
man with
designed.
against a blonde-haired lady. But how
Yeah,
many
it was not
hundreds and
designed for him.
thousands? Yes,
Yeah.
and how many thousands about that they don't cry about? They don't cry about. It happens every day. They don't cry about those people. So sorry.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
Mhm.
she has an OJ hill to climb.
Yeah. She does, and it's a
Yeah.
sad state
Yes.
of affairs. Why you say he
Very much
must speak
so.
out on the Foster matter? Why you think he must speak out on the Foster matter?
Because it's a question of in government, I think very important that you have trust. For example, I think I'm going on I would call it, making a comment that is tangential and not related to this. But for example, in the financial system, no bank has all the money that if every customer came on a particular day and asked for their money, no bank has the ability to pay everyone. They just don't. So what makes banks succeed is confidence and trust. Confidence and trust that when they do come, they will get their money, which is what causes a run on a bank, because when they lose that trust and confidence, everybody wants their money at the same time and the bank falls apart. So in the same analogy that I'm making, the prime minister has had many challenges in terms of people having the adequate trust in his government, with a number of issues that have come up. And I think that the Cummings issue, given that the report was from the police service, and therefore it was not from any political interest, and that he had it since 2019. I don't think he has denied, he has said nothing. And I believe that he had it as head of National Security Council, that having had him as a senator during that period of time, and then appointed him as well, then made him we couldn't make him an MP, but then he was elevated to a member of parliament and a cabinet minister after 2019, after the report was put to the prime minister. I think he owes the country some explanation for that decision that he made. I think he owes he can't just sweep them. It's a disrespect for the people. It's a disregard for the people. It's like, I don't have to answer. And you do have to answer for everything. He put you there. And
Is
he
the
put you
people?
there on the
Yeah.
basis. Yes, and he put you there because we wanted to trust you and have confidence in you. And therefore, you owe us that. You can't tell us it's not our business. It is our business. It's very much our business. So I definitely think he has to make a statement on why he did not pass it on. And remember, the Malik McDonald issue is a forerunner to this. So it does not help that he's had a forerunner to this. And now you're coming with a similar, not similar, but a situation where there's this evidence. I mean, this evidence, and that you may have a good explanation. And you see what is happening is when he doesn't say anything, it deepens the lack of trust. Deepens a lot, because you say, well, if there's a good explanation, you talk to him, you did your investigation, then say something. But the fact that you stay in silence, it's not a good look. And it doesn't help Minister Cummings either.
And what is the resulting consequence when it deepens the lack of trust? People's imagination begin to go all about the place. They start to say some of the most derogatory things. They start to speculate about the worst, and therefore the confidence in the government is lowered much faster, rapidly, and they themselves will be digging a very deep hole for themselves, which would be a steep one too to climb out of when they come to election time. Why do
you better join what's her name? The
Webster
Minister of
Roy?
Gender Affairs.
Is it
Climbing up that steep mountain.
is it possible some of the ministers might be in need of exercise? So they are doing
And
this. So they're
well,
doing
they're
things
gonna
to compel them
mountain
towards
climbing
the
is a
prime
new
hills.
mountain climbing is a new sport.
That
But
could be a
also
new
too,
sport.
but also too, it comes on the heels of the curious, to say the least, with resignation of the Minister of Agriculture. I mean, come on, you must take us for real town idiots to think that we could buy a story that you have missed your family for 19 months, but you're still here, apparently. And in any event, you're taking a position within the ministry when you were the minister. I would never want that, because once you do that, the minister could tell you, you have to resign. I'm not pleased with your performance. You're making yourself so vulnerable. Why would you do that? It makes no sense. Nobody with a brain or half a brain could understand his resignation on the basis of personal reasons when it came on the heels of him disclosing on 95.5 or one of those radio stations that he had given some report of wrongdoing to the prime minister. You know, nobody just within, and I don't think it was less than a week after, the coincidence is too coincidental that a week after he comes and says, I guess out of frustration, that's how I read it. Now, I don't know. I didn't ask anybody. I don't discuss. I don't call any ministers. I try to keep my distance and respect their position. So I don't try to put them in any situation like that. But common sense says to me that it is more than coincidental that he must have felt, this is what I would think, he was so frustrated, could not get the prime minister to respond. And in his frustration, he decided, well, I'm going to bust the thing and say the prime minister had it. And because it's soon thereafter, he resigned on the basis of his family, but he's staying here and taking another job within the ministry that he was the minister of. How is that making any sense? It's not making any sense at all.
After he had said that it was a challenge for him to succeed as a minister,
he said that, right. That's why I told you.
And you will take a job that is less to fight the same problem you couldn't fight properly when you were minister.
It doesn't make any sense.
That just doesn't make sense.
It's not computing. It's not computing at all. And he must have learned from Robert LeHunt, who I like very much, Robert LeHunt, that don't ever fight the party. You remember Mr. Eric Williams said you could put a tie on a crapu and you still vote PNM, and I don't think it's so anymore. But the point is, no, don't say nah like that.
No, those say nah.
You can say nah, but don't say three nahs because it's not clear completely, all right? Well, come on, Richard, be honest, okay? Come on.
You still
and that goes to both, it goes to both parties, so let's not pretend. But I'm not...
Karen, are you saying we might have human... how I should say, representatives of what you may want to call that animal or creature?
No. I don't know of any at all. But I'm just saying the level at which a party loyalty stands before loyalty to a minister. You cannot think, and any minister who thinks that his constituency, as much as they say they love you, as much as they say they back you up, you are fooling yourself in whether UNC, PNM, or any government, that the person is bigger than the party. No way. No way. Okay, so that's the lesson. And that is the lesson that maybe the Minister of Agriculture woke up and said, you know what? If I don't make kumbaya with the Prime Minister, I might find myself in a really untenable situation. I don't know what happened, but, you know, that whole situation with the Minister of Agriculture, and then this now with it's not looking good. Can we say that?
Yeah, that's all right. I agree with you. Not looking good. Karen, there's this problem. There's this problem where you have these trucks transporting people within the prison walls. That makes sense?
I have nothing to say about that.
So that is very definitive and blunt. You have nothing to say. You have nothing. I mean, come on. I would say something.
No, I don't have anything to say about that at all.
So we couldn't put some other trucks in there owned by the states to move them from one building to the next.
Listen, I have nothing to say about that. Who could read, who could spell, could read. Who don't want to read, don't read. I am not spelling for anybody to read.
Kind of right. Don't say anything. And
not saying anything. You know, my brother said over the weekend when we got together, and it's your rules. Yeah. He said, what cockroach doing in foul business?
Yes.
All right, there we go.
So I guess you are certainly not one of those insects.
Well, I must be the cockroach.
No. Cockroach don't look so good, Karen. Come on.
Crazy. You like to fool me up too much, huh? But anyway.
You talk about the hairdresser and so on. What they call him hairdresser, hairstylist, how to tell it, they're still doing a magnificent job. No, really, really. Um,
Okay, I
everywhere
will
you go
take
in
it.
this
Thank
country,
you.
Karen, yeah,
Uh,
everywhere you go in this country, most places I move around a lot.
mm,
There's this, outcry, the
yes,
pressure on the small man, our party is taking us.
absolutely.
Has it been your experience as well?
That what? No, yes,
That
absolutely, absolutely. This is so. You know what bothers me? I will tell you. I think what bothers me the most, what bothers me the very most, is the huge gap between the haves and the have-nots, and the shrinking of the middle class, and in my view, the legislation and policies of this government, which seem only to favor those who already are well positioned. And, you know, I believe that you do should have a strong a strong well, not upper class, but really business class. Because if you do have that, they provide jobs and they provide hopefully good paying jobs. So we don't want to say we want to that it should not be there. But what I find is that there's almost a disappearance of the middle class struggling, especially those in small businesses and medium-sized business. They have been the ones that have struggled. And then the men at the bottom of the thing, which are so many people, so many of our citizens. And it hurts me. Yes, I would say it does hurt me to see that. And I feel that the government, with the procurement legislation, I was reading something about something with the maritime, some maritime thing with the port. They're going to have their own procurement. They're going to have their own procurement team or something like that. This procurement legislation, people don't realize how detrimental it is to the country. And this gambling legislation, this these agreements where you have, which sound good on paper, public-private partnership, only people that have money could participate. And I feel the government is a government of all the people. And while you don't want to depress the those at the top, you're supposed to be governing not for, you're supposed to govern for, lift them out, bring them up. Don't have them on transfers and subsidies, bring them up. And I don't feel this government is doing enough of that. And some of the things that show you that, I think we need, I mentioned it on another I think the last time you were on, but two things I want to mention. And that's why the IMF is pushing for National Statistical Institute, because you will find that a lot of the information that we don't, that is not understood, it will come to the front. For example, when you say that, I said it before, but I'm saying it again. When you say that the per capita by the head of all the persons in Trinidad, which is 1.4 million, Trinidad and Tobago, 1.4 million, if you took what we earned in the goods and services we produce in a year and we divided it equally among every citizen, 1.4 million, it would come up to say 15,000 US per capita. That's what it means. But that's not the reality. That's not the reality. And then if they applied, which I've said this before, and it stopped in 1991, what they call the Gini coefficient, then you will see the distribution of that income. And therefore, you will see if 5% of this country is working on average a US $500,000 and the lower 40% working for about 3,000 US. And when you see that disparity, something is wrong. Something is wrong that the government, I think, needs to, just like how Biden in America, where he brought in this trillion, well, we don't have no $1 trillion because they could print as much money as they want. But he understands that it's the middle people in the middle that suffer the most. He has created opportunities for them to move forward and help the small and medium businesses. And I do not find there's enough effort on this part of this government to do that. I feel they have these people at the bottom. I mean, what are they, that income they're making even now? I know it's tax-free, but it can't mind anybody's children. I know they rely on this, and a lot of people get mad that they rely on subsidies, and so they create dependency. But I feel the government needs to do more to close that gap, because what the UNDP says, you cannot have sustainable development unless you reduce income inequality. And that is my greatest concern by the way the legislation and the policies of this government, that they are not doing enough, in my respectful opinion, to close, not, you will not ever close that gap, but to reduce the gap of income inequality so that the wealth of this nation belongs to every single citizen. And it's not being enjoyed by them. It's almost as if they're not entitled to it. It's almost as if they are, you know, they don't deserve it. And that is not right. It's not right. You know, Eric Williams, I mean, I'm no big going back in Balizé waving PNM, I have to say. But I mean, with Eric Williams saying the future of our children rely on their school bags, because I come from that kind of family. My father didn't have a business. He told us, if you want to get out of this, you have to get an education. And I am saying not enough is being done to pull them out. And, you know, and this, all these videos they're showing of these children fighting. How is that helping? How is that helping them? And you hear them called cockroaches and zesters. I told Gary Griffith, that were you calling people children cockroaches and zesters? Why are you doing that? They're already suffering from poor self-worth. They're already suffering from low self-esteem. They already have issues with themselves. Why don't you see that you need to help them to build them up? And that is not handouts, hand-ups. And not feeding this group that they can buy everything and own everything, whoever they may be. You know, it's not, cannot be right. It cannot be right.
You know, they are the ones who are being fed fully. The plate can't hold anymore. Those who are getting everything, and yet still to expand the plate to put more on it. I mean, these people, they're looking all over the world to find
whoever these people are,
whoever they are. And yet,
but I'm not even dealing with these people.
I get that.
The hands
those in charge who, because you can't get those people around who have a lot and still getting. Because, I mean, that's how the system is designed. But as a government, you should have a better even hand to make sure that when you are distributing wealth, that the poorest will get a part of, as Mr. Manning used to say, that everyone can have an equal.
That's what disturbs me most.
What's that?
That's what disturbs me most. I think that is if I have to say the issue that disturbs me most is the growing inequality, and we know them in the barrel, and it's not good for their self-esteem or self-worth, you know. So that's why I say these things, you know, because I feel somebody has to speak out. Somebody has to say something. And I mean, that is why to a large extent I feel that I do talk about these issues, because I feel the government really needs to do much more to help them. And you know, this disdain and this contempt. I mean, why are you treating people there, you know, with contempt and disdain? They are an outcome of certain circumstances, which having a thriving drug trade doesn't help. You know, it's just it's a very.
Those in that trade, to me, the government is assisting in creating the factory for the drug trade dealers to have a factory from which to recruit people. Because when you pursue policies that leave so many people out of the economic system, the policies blocking them from becoming genuine participants in the real economic part of the country. And they're just there waiting, as you said. Depending on where you are, you may end up turning to those same people, because that's where you get your love, as you said earlier on, and they take care of you. So you end up going to do things you didn't even imagine that you would have considered doing. But because of what you see happening to your family and the need to get out of it, somebody's showing you a sort of an opening, which you could see as an exit strategy to perhaps help your family, you will take it. And then sometimes you make your family worse. That option sometimes.
Sometimes when the boy gets killed, the mother say he's a good boy. And here why he's a good boy now? He say, Mom's hold that. Mom's not asking him how she holding that.
No, she don't want to know that, because they're so needed.
That is too much complications.
Yeah, I just taking it.
Yeah, but you see, what I'm saying is a lot of blaming of that. And I understand when people say, you know, that they don't have time, but that's what makes them vulnerable. That's what I am sure you go to any part of the world, as I said, and you go to urban poverty, you will see the same behavior replicated. And I am saying it's no respecter of race or religion, because you have it in every group that you will find that Italy is known for that. I mean, Italy is known, you know, maybe all watch The Godfather or whatever. Well, you know, showing my age a little bit, but more than. But the point is, it's not a respect of, not respect of races, you know. So
Yeah.
we have to. I feel that I feel that the government has let down, and these people, you know, they don't understand. Someone wrote an article. It was such a very good article. Oh, I know who it was, but he said that they don't realize when they follow blindly, they are not the beneficiaries of the government's largesse, you know, and it belongs to
And
them
they're the
because all that
victims.
oil and
They're the
gas is
victims.
ours,
The
you know.
truth is they're the victims
They
because
are the victims
they're
twice
the
over.
victims. Yeah, because every time, like with gas prices going up, it's only one group of people had to suffer that, you know, the small man.
Exactly.
Because the rich will pass it on. Everybody pass it on and inflate their prices so they don't feel it. But it stops by the small man who has to pay more for everything. So his purchasing power automatically is reduced and he has to carry the brunt of it. And
But that's
those
why the
people
government,
who do that know what they're doing, that will be the outcome of the action. And with the
but
knowledge of that, they still do it.
But
That is
Richard, I would
cruelty.
go and say this as my theory, one of my theories. You know, when I look at the use of subsidies, yes, subsidies are used to nurturing a caring society and all UNDP developmental goals. But you know, I think now, and I've kind of hinted at that, I think subsidies are used now, and I may be wrong, and it's just a theory, and it's my opinion. I'm not standing on saying that I have it right. I'm saying it's an opinion that I have. But I think subsidies are now being used more to keep those at the bottom quiet. In other
Yeah.
words, right, so don't rebel. Oh, you're not making enough money, we'll subsidize this, we subsidize that, we subsidize that. And so instead of subsidies being used really to help you to move, because we have spent a lot on education, no question, to learn, teach you to fish. But in every family, we know they have some who will not fish, cannot fish. They always have. There's always, every family has a cannot and will not fish, right? So I think subsidies are really being, in my opinion, used in part as a way to keep those at the bottom quiet, and that they are sufficiently what the government will top it up to stay, so you stay right where you belong at the bottom of the barrel, just making it with these subsidies. And in doing so, you sort of act as a deterrent in a way, or I wouldn't say deterrent, but a lack of incentive for those at the bottom to pull themselves, because the opportunities are scarce and go to one group of people. And I think the government has failed the people in not taking care of those at the lower strata, and only the ones at the top benefit. And they're getting richer and richer and richer. And as they get richer and richer and richer, obviously somebody pays the price. And that's what my
Yeah.
concern is. So
Yeah.
that's where I am most concerned.
And it's sad. It's sad. It is very, very sad, Karen. And it's a most painful thing. Let me just ask you one more question, I believe, before we close
Okay.
today.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right.
because you know they're talking about having a new police commissioner by the end of the year. You see that as possible? Really?
What if the commission, if she Judy Jones, who I respect, I have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
respect for her. She was a former justice of her people. That doesn't necessarily say anything, but I respect her. If she said that, I don't know that I shouldn't believe her, because I think what they have done is going through the process. What is this? Oh yes, I mean, this is May. That's a long time, actually. So if she says the end of the year, that's a way long time to get a new commissioner appointed, because what they're going through the
Mm-hmm.
process of interviewing, and part of the interviewing process is looking into due diligence and doing the background test on the background information on the applicant. And so, yes, I don't see why it shouldn't happen, but it's unfortunate that we have to wait even that long, because we have 7 months without our commissioner of police, and that's not a good thing for the country. But there's so
Should the
many
one we have now, should the acting one that we have now be confirmed? You think? I know you can't say
confirmed.
anything.
Now,
Well,
what do
when
you
they
what,
go through the
what do you mean?
process, yeah.
Well, But I can't say that. I mean, I don't know who the other applicants are, and I don't know if he has distinguished himself. I don't
I'm
know
talking
that.
about based on what you may have seen before, the number of
Okay,
murders happened so
well, it's
far.
not even the number of murders. I think how
Yeah.
he handled that situation when with the tear gas. I think that was totally
Around the savannah.
unnecessary. Yes, that was
Yeah.
totally unnecessary, and it was used as in my view, as a intimidatory. And I think that was not did not. I think he looks. Look, I don't know the gentleman, but he seems to willing to toe the line, and we don't want someone who's a renegade. But at the same point in time, you have to be careful that you don't want someone who is does not appear to me um, to demonstrate a sufficient independence from from the government. That's what I find. What I find about him, I don't. I find coming from a Gary Griffith. I find Gary Griffith. I mean, Gary Griffith himself, 539 deaths, murders in the 2019. That was the second highest murder rate. The highest happened when I was in government in 2008. So, full disclosure. But Jacob doesn't seem very charismatic, and I don't know if charisma is a necessary thing for that, but it goes to quality of leadership within the branch. So I will say that I'm not saying he should be confirmed. He can apply like everybody else, and if he's the best person for the job, let him get it. But he does
I
not
see.
inspire me as being very charismatic or giving the impression of that, whatever you need to be a leader in the police service. I don't know. But that's just an
And then
impression.
I'm picking up that Gary Griffith made it very difficult for him based on how the beliefs.
He make it
Is
very
that
difficult for anybody coming after him. Oh gosh, Gary Good, I have too much charisma.
I think you're right. I
Which me
think you're
not,
right.
yes, but me that's
Yeah.
another story. So in relation to the question you have asked me, let him apply, and if he's the person for the job, I have confidence in this police service commission, and I think they will do what is right.
But we are heading to 200 murders. And this time last year, I'm being told we were around 121.
Oh,
And we're almost
what do you think?
200 murders now.
So why you think? Why you think? What causes murder rates to go down? What causes, if a country is dealing with unrest or high murder rate or whatever it is, what can you use to bring the number down? Now, the government did it for the spread of the disease, but the effect of it was the same. Countries and governments use states of emergency, and the public health regulations operated in many ways as much as the state of emergency, in sense of gatherings, numbers outside, and all those things that facilitate crime, they have been removed. So what made it come down may have to a large extent be a result of the removal of many of restrictions from the public health regulations and the lifting of the state of emergency in this November. So we're seeing the uptick going on. I think that is the main reason. It was suppressed, and now it's coming. That is one of the factors.
I know I said the last question. You believe,
Yeah, I know that you keep saying the last question.
No, this is it. This is it.
This
I
is
mean,
really the last question.
this really, really.
Really the last question.
Yeah, all right, yeah. Not too long ago, I would say just beyond the recent past, our government could pursue policies that resulted in really squeezing the people, the citizens, and then
Like
just
what?
before the election. Well, the same thing. They're not creating enough jobs, other social programs, not enough money in the social development, social welfare ministry, and you have people, fighting for 10 days here and a CPAP and there, for the vast majority of them not making it on the list for fortnight. And they leave them like that for a long time. But just before the election, they find money from somewhere. And they say that was hire everybody, make sure everybody works. So they work for 2 weeks until things now start to turn around. This is it. We headed up the road from here, and then all the people run out and vote for them because they feel every day would be as it is right now going forward. But as they win again, they withdraw the money and put them back in that terrible place. and do them that
So
for another.
fool me once, shame on you. Fool me
Right.
twice, shame
Shame
on
on
me.
me.
So,
Yeah.
right?
So
So that's what
right,
I
but
would say to that.
no, but the question is, I didn't ask the question yet, you know.
You
That's
didn't
the
ask the
problem.
question? Okay.
No, no, no. Here's the question now. You
Uh-huh.
believe in this time, 2022, before an election, if a government does that now, that will be the reaction of the people? And you may still have some, but you think those numbers will be today as they used to be beyond
Well,
the
I think it has
recent?
started changing for a few years now with the COPD because we have now about a 20-25% of floating voters now. So
Yeah.
they really play an important role in the outcome of an election. So I think with regard to the current administration, one of the things the Prime Minister did handle very, very well and was very astute in doing was he handled the COVID-19 situation very well at the beginning. He showed strong leadership, no nonsense leadership, and that's what the country needed at the time. And he called the election around the same time. And that's when all the WHO and everybody was praising Trinidad for how it handled it.
Trinidad.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that I think had a lot to do with his being re-elected. But going forward, I think there's enough of a floating voter and there's enough of people who are disenchanted that you may find that those groups that are coming out, what's his name, in Tobago,
PDP.
yeah, the PDP. I think, although I don't know, anyway, let me just say the PDP, NTA, I don't know how far they'll go, but I think it may be a little different this time because I think people's eyes have been opened, as everybody says, and that's why there's a sense of hopelessness. They say each one, six of one, half a dozen of the other. That's what you hear people say. So I think there's enough of disenchantment that you might see people moving in another direction, and we have enough floating voters that may do. And unless we have some other event, massive event that will restore people's faith in this government, yes, I think you might see a different pattern in the voting this time around.
Karen
Is that fair?
Nunez Tesheira. I think that's fair. And
You
I
like
think
to,
what
you know, you're not telling me your view on that, doing, Richard?
no, no, I'm telling you, I think it's fair. I think, well, let me tell you, I don't believe, I think you're right. I don't believe it would be today as it was beyond the recent past, as I
Yeah,
said. I think there
yeah,
has been not just a movement, but a shift. People
yes.
have, the amount of people who seem to have moved away from that pattern, they have triggered what I will call a shift. Like you have to
Seismic.
actually,
Mm.
well, I don't know if it's seismic, but it's a reasonable shift. But
A
it was bigger
reasonable,
than a
reasonable.
movement. It was bigger than a movement along any curve.
Yes, I agree.
So that what you find now is that, and that move, that shift may be big enough, and that's what
Yeah,
happened in Tobago. That's what happened
yeah,
in Tobago.
absolutely. Oh,
I
you're
don't know
right.
what happened in Trinidad, but I think some of that momentum will flow into Trinidad. The feeling you get when
Absolutely.
you walk around, I think
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
government has contributed to creating a turf that is very susceptible now to something new coming in and taking
Absolutely.
people a lot here, and that could
Yeah,
spell serious.
absolutely.
Yeah, we had a fight to hold on to keep the party, but we had to do some internal house cleaning. And you know what I'm saying? Some major internal house cleaning. Because if we fail to do that, the worst thing we can do is allow the Balize, the PNM name, to be thrown out with those whom people are suggesting should be removed from the organization. I think we had to take some serious, serious decisions going forward because we're not in a good place.
No, we're not.
We are not. And I see now we are 6:03, and I want to apologize for the extra 3
Yes,
minutes.
and you see me in darkness because I couldn't get up to put on my light.
I
You
see,
see?
Karen, there's no darkness that could cover your
Oh
beauty.
God, what you, Richard, you full of talks, full of talk. Even the person, David McIntyre, whoever, the
Yeah.
technician, he has to laugh because
Yeah.
he's saying, oh God,
Because
how
he
much is
knows I'm
flattering the
speaking the
lady?
truth. Karen, he knows I'm speaking the truth. I mean, come
All
on.
right, Richard, if you want to
Yeah.
say so, who am I to disagree with you?
But there
Who
you
am
go. There
I?
you go. Karen, it was a pleasure again, as
As
always.
always.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
All
Thank you
right,
so
take
much.
care.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the
Take
rest
care.
of the evening, and we'll see you again
Thank
next
you.
week. All right.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
And
Take care.
welcome
Bye-bye.
back too. Welcome back from your long, wonderful vacation.
It was wonderful. It was. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We
All
go
right.
straight to the news at 6.
All right. I'm gone.